All right, I think it's 5. Let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Polita Paulus. I'm a program manager on the Windows team, and I know this is the last session of the day. I'm the only thing standing between you and whatever you're going to do tonight. So thanks for coming out. I also want to say I'm not Anders. If you thought you were going to the TypeScript thing, then, maybe look at your schedule again. But I think you guys all rock for coming here instead of to Anders and Steve Luca's talk. I considered putting a sign on the door of Anders' talk that said Overflow Room 104, but I decided not to. So today we're going to talk about upgrading your Windows 8 apps to Windows 8.1. And how many of you actually have apps, Windows 8 apps in the store today or are planning on putting one together? Awesome, that's great. I've got one too. And we would love to see you upgrade your Windows 8 apps to Windows 8.1, and so we're going to talk about how to do that and what the pluses and minuses are of that today. So if you've never built a Windows 8 app or don't plan to, this might not be the talk for you. There are other talks going on this week that might make more sense if you're trying to just get the basics of either HTML or XAML apps. I also want to say we're not going to talk about upgrading a C++ app today. We're going to focus on XAML and HTML apps. And then we're going to talk about what it's like to have those two apps in the store. And we'll do demos of both the XAML and HTML apps upgrading in the store. So fantastic. The first question is, why should I upgrade my app to Windows 8.1? In the store, you will continue to see all Windows 8 apps advertised to users who have Windows 8.1 installed. So if you have your Windows 8 app in the store and your users have Windows 8.1, they will see your app in the store and will be able to continue to download it, pay you for it, install it, and run it. And if they stay on Windows 8 and you upgrade your app to Windows 8.1, they won't see that 8.1 version. So there's a cost-benefit analysis there. There's some work to be done to upgrade your app to Windows 8.1. Is it really going to benefit you? And this is something that you guys as app owners have to think about. So let's talk about that trade-off and what you're going to and what you get from upgrading your app. The first thing is we've done a huge amount of work in Windows 8.1 on performance. And these are just some of the numbers that you will see that are improvements to your app performance before you change even a single line of code once you retarget for Windows 8.1. And you'll see even greater performance benefits if you start using some of the Windows 8.1 features once you've retargeted. For example, you can use the WinJS scheduler or dispose model, and you'll see better performance and reduced working set. So let's take a look at what this looks like. I just want to show you a video of the performance benefits in Windows 8.1. On the left, we have Windows 8 with all of the current upgrades installed. And on the right, we have Windows 8.1, as you guys have downloaded and installed today, hopefully. And the video will show the March Mail app, so the most recent version of the Mail app on Windows 8, and retargeted for Windows 8.1, but no code changed. So what you're going to see is those running side by side, and I want you to look for a couple things. One is the startup improvement time that you'll see in Windows 8.1 over Windows 8. And then you'll see a slight pause. And then you'll see the panning improvements that we've made in the list view when those two lists start panning. So there you can see the initialization time improvement. And there you can see some of the improvements in panning. And I'm going to play that one more time because it might have been hard to catch. But I want you to look this time on the Windows 8 side. You'll see what we call backdrops, which are those gray boxes that show up when you're panning quickly that mean that we can't quite keep up with rendering. There we go. Faster on initialization, and smoother on panning. And again, this is without any code changes in the Mail app. And this is the kind of thing that your users will really appreciate with your new app going much faster on panning and initialization. And across the board, we've made these kinds of improvements. The next reason to upgrade your application are all these great features that we've built into Windows 8.1 that you can take advantage of within your application. Now, this is really an eye chart. I'm sure you guys can't see all of it, but these are just some of the developer features that we've built in Windows 8.1. And when this deck is available online very soon, you can look at every last one of them and figure out how you can integrate them into your app and really leverage Windows 8.1 to build awesomeness into your application. And the last reason is we all want to make money, right? Well, Windows 8.1 is this great opportunity for you to be one of the first Windows 8.1 apps in the store. And great store apps that take advantage of the Windows 8.1 platform are more likely to be featured in the store. And as you know, if you're featured, you're more likely to get downloads and more likely to get money. So beat the rush. Be one of the first 8.1 apps in the store. So let's take a step back and look at the big picture of what it takes to upgrade. And I really want you to think of upgrading not just as a one-shot deal, but as building a better app for Windows 8.1. The first step is really to get up and running and to retarget your application for Windows 8.1 and to do things like update the references within your application. Test it, make sure it's working well. The second step is to take advantage of all those great features that we've built in Windows 8.1 that you saw in that eye chart, and to build something better. And we're not going to talk a lot about that because you guys are here at Build, and there are literally dozens of talks about all the things that you can take advantage of in Windows 8.1 to build a better application. One thing I do want to call out specifically for, though, is search. Search is a little bit different in Windows 8.1 than it was in Windows 8. So you will want to take a close look at how you can use search within your Windows 8.1 app. And the third step, submitting to the store so that you can get it up there and make money and get eyeballs. And we will talk about how you can submit to the store at the end of this presentation. And I meant to say, feel free to interrupt me with questions. We've got microphones, or you can save them till the end, but I'm happy to answer anything in the middle as well. So engineering questions. If I have two applications, my Windows 8 application and my Windows 8.1 application, how do I maintain those code bases? Well, for a lot of you, you already know the answer to this question. If you use source code control, then chances are you already know you're going to create a new branch, and you're going to have your Windows 8 branch and your Windows 8.1 branch. And if you have bug fixes that need to go into both, then you'll just integrate them across. And this is how Microsoft handles this particular question. If you do things like backup to a thumb drive or a share or some other non-source control method of backing up your code, you're probably just going to copy that solution and start fresh with an 8.1 copy. You can create a single solution in Visual Studio that has projects for your 8 and 8.1 source code, but this will get messy if you have things like shared references for SDK libraries that reference one version of the operating system or the other. So I would generally discourage this. Keeping them kind of ring-fenced from each other makes things a lot cleaner. And the tooling that you're going to use to build this is, of course, Visual Studio. Visual Studio is available for everybody to download today. And the different SKUs of Visual Studio support upgrade and support the different versions of Windows in different ways. If you're using Professional, Premium, and Ultimate, then you can create, edit, and build Windows 8.1 projects. You can upgrade 8 to 8.1 projects, and you can edit and build your Windows 8 projects. You cannot create new projects in Windows 8 with Professional, Premium, and Ultimate. We'll talk about what you do with that in a moment. If you download Express, You can, of course, create, edit, and build your Windows 8.1 projects. And you can also upgrade your Windows 8 projects to Windows 8.1. Now back to that question about what do I do with my Windows 8 projects if I need to create new ones. Well, Visual Studio 2012 for Windows 8 and Visual Studio 2013 for Windows 8.1 run side by side on the same machine. So you can literally have Visual Studio 2012 up and Visual Studio 2013 up and build your projects at the same time. So let's get to work. Let's see what some of this is like. And I'm going to use our new tools, Visual Studio 2013, to upgrade a XAML app. And the XAML app I'm going to use is the blog reader. I don't know if any of you have looked at this on MSDN, but this was a sample that we've had since we shipped Windows 8. And you can get all of that source code online. And so I'm using this because that source code is available to you already. And we'll see what it's like when I open this project in Visual Studio. You can see I've already gotten a dialog that says, I recommend you retarget this to Windows 8.1. This dialog isn't actually going to do it for us. It's telling us how to. I'm going to say OK. And this is my Windows 8 project. You can see in the solution that it's been identified as a Windows 8 project. Let's go ahead and run it to see what we have as our original Windows 8 project. So this isn't the most beautiful app in the world, but it works. It was built off of our split item template. And so it's got a lot of the same features that you would find in the split item template in Visual Studio. If we click on one of these blog entries, we'll see we've got a nice list view on one side, and then we've got contents from blogs that are live on Windows on the other side. And we can click through this and see all the different blog posts. We can also reduce this down to a small size. And this is snapped mode. You may remember from Windows 8 that all apps needed to support snapped mode. It's 320 pixels wide, and it supports a slightly different view. But because we're in Windows 8.1, when you increase it just a little bit, you get this pillar boxing, these black lines on the side. And this is because it's running in app compat mode as a Windows 8 project. Because this app was never designed to run larger than 320 but smaller than 1024, we get these pillar boxes. So great. Let's go ahead and stop this guy. And let's upgrade our XAML app to Windows 8.1. I'm going to right-click on the project and choose Retarget to 8.1. Yes, that's what I would like to do. And Word is opening a file for us that's going to give us all sorts of information on what it's like to upgrade and help us through any problems that we need to address as we upgrade our project. This is great. We'll take a little bit more look at this later. But let's see what the upgrade did. We can now see that this is a Windows 8.1 project right here in the Solution Explorer. And if we go to Properties, it's confirmed in our project properties. That didn't bring it up there. OK, so let's go ahead and run it and see what we get. Right out of the box, it looks just the same. If we click any one of these, it behaves the same way it did before, and we have no issues. Of course, I'd want to test all the way through, but for this particular app, it just worked without me making any code changes. Now, I won't promise you that for your app or for your XAML app or any other platform that it will just work. But for some set of applications, all you have to do is retarget, and it's going to work out of the box. Now, you may wonder about that snapped mode, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But this application now supports down to 500, and there's no pillar boxing. So again, we'll talk more about that later on. And let's switch back. And now that we've upgraded our XAML app, let's see what it's like to upgrade our HTML app. Let's close this instance down. And again, I'm going to use the Windows blog reader. This source is also available on MSDN. It's almost the same application. It looks a little bit different in colors, things like that, for no real reason except that that's what we happen to publish. I use these because you can go and get all this source code online, and you can try these upgrades yourself. Now, when we open this project, it's still targeted for Windows 8. And when I open references, you'll see Windows Library for JavaScript 1.0. And if I open my default.html, you can see my script tags and my link tag all point to my Microsoft.winjs.1.0 library. Let's go ahead and run it. Uh-oh, let's try that again. Fantastic. So now when I click on one of these items, instead of green, you get purple, but it essentially works the same, and you don't have that white background. But we're seeing much the same theme. And whoops. And again, I can make it split, and it supports a nice snapped view. And right now you can see a little bit of pillar boxing on there. If I get it just a tiny bit smaller, we'll see no pillar boxing. And let's go ahead and upgrade that. So once again, I'll right-click on my solution file, and I'll say retarget to Windows 8.1. It's going to warn me that I should back up my files, and I definitely encourage you to back up all of your files before you start upgrading, because an upgrade is a one-way process. You can't go backwards once you've upgraded. And we've already opened this particular document, and we'll talk about it in a minute, so I'm not going to open it again. But now you see that my solution is upgraded for Windows 8.1, and my reference has updated to Windows Library for JavaScript 2.0 Preview. And Visual Studio has taken care of upgrading those references within my default.js or default.html to the correct path for Microsoft.winjs.2.preview. So fantastic. Let's run it and see what happens out of the box. Things look like they're working pretty well. I can continue to click on any of these items and see the blog posts associated with them. But if you have a very sharp eye, you might notice a minor difference. And it's about that purple border. That purple border used to go all the way around the light blue box that has the date. It's very hard to see, so I took a screenshot. And let's look side by side at what these look like. On Windows 8, you can see around June 24, the purple box extends all the way around. And on Windows 8.1, that purple box doesn't go quite all the way around. It's just to the right. And you can also see with the scroll bar, it doesn't go quite as far out to the scroll bar as it used to. This is because we've changed a few things in our WinJS list view. And these changes are specifically to address performance and new features. And a bunch of our properties that used to be properties on the control are now properties in CSS, so that you can style them the way that you would expect to style something in CSS. These may or may not affect your application, But these are things that we've documented within our migration file that now let's take a look at. And this migration file is really going to be your guide as you find any issues like this as you migrate. And this migration file opens up in Visual Studio. And it's going to step you through this process. One of the things I want you to look at are these two links up at the top left-hand corner. One is API changes for C#, VB, C++ XAML file, applications. And the other one is API changes for JavaScript and HTML. We happen to be in JavaScript, so I'll open up that version. And these are all live for you to look at now online. This is all of the stuff that we've changed, and it's really that API reference that you will use as you hit any issues with migration. So this isn't the kind of thing that you're going to take home and read as a novel tonight, but it's a great reference. Use it to search. Use it to look for anything that you think is not quite right between your 8 and 8.1 versions. And of course, if there are anything that you find that isn't in here, please tell us about it. We want you guys to tell us about any migration issues that you've found that you didn't find helpful within this documentation so that we can make it better. So when you look at this document, you'll find those issues about list layout in our list view. And we won't look at the whole section. I'll leave you guys to do that. But I've already gone through it, and I've isolated this particular change that's causing that purple border to not be quite right. So let's go ahead and make that change. And the problem is right here in the split page. The CSS for the split page needs to be tweaked just a little bit. We no longer collapse margins. So the padding that used to be on the win container is no longer something that you declare on the win container, and it needs to be adjusted for in some of these other properties. So I've done some math ahead of time, and we'll adjust the bottom to be 0, the right margin to be 21, and the top margin to be 6. And that padding that we took off, that 7 pixels of padding, now belongs on the item. And again, this all looks like back magic right now, but it is all documented for you to look at. We'll add padding back. And let's rerun it. And now you can see it's looking a lot more like our Windows 8 version. Great. One other thing I want to call out is while we're running this, the JavaScript console is up. Let's make it a little bigger. And you can see there's a warning message at the bottom of the JavaScript console. And it's telling us that an API has been deprecated, and we were calling it. And the API is applicationView.value. The recommendation is to replace your code. But this is a deprecation, which means that you can continue to call it. And we're going to talk a lot more about this particular deprecation. But this is the place that you want to look for warnings like this on deprecated APIs that you've called within your HTML application. If you're running a XAML application, your deprecations, as you know, will pop up when you compile as a warning. So let's talk about those window sizes. As you all saw in the keynote, Windows 8.1 supports far more window sizes and flexibility than Windows 8 did. In Windows 8, you had 2 options. You were in snapped mode, or that 320 pixel wide mode that you see on the right that the weather app is in, or you were 1024 or above in width, and you didn't have a choice about whether to support snapped mode. As a developer, your application could get into snapped mode, which means that you had to design for it and do something. In Windows 8.1, we've opened up the window sizes to a far greater range. And you can see different things that apps have decided to do with that range. In the middle, you'll see the weather app now supports down to 500 pixels. It's decided 500 pixels is the right minimum width for its information. On the far right, you'll see the reading list app, a very cool new application, has decided that it wants to support down to 320 pixels because it can use that space very well to show you a list of articles and things that you'll want to come back to later. And it's really designed to sit there in the margins and collect things from your share charm and show them to you. On the left, you'll see the Mail app, and it's been designed for 2-column layouts when that's about the right size for the amount of information that you have on the screen. So as a developer, how do you use this information? Well, we no longer have snap state. So along with having snap state gone, we've deprecated those APIs that used to tell you that you were in snap state. And that's that application view.value and application value view.try-and-snap that we saw in the JavaScript console, warning us that aren't there anymore. You can continue to call these. Your code that was under your snapped state most likely just won't run anymore, and everything will be just fine. Chances are good that your application will run as a horizontally scrolling application in the 500 pixels and above, where it used to work in your filled mode, in your full mode. However, if you did math that did things like figure out your window width and then subtract off a bunch of other element sizes or divide by element sizes, you may end up with math errors, negative sizes of elements, divide by zeros. So definitely test what your application is doing in those different view states once you've moved over to Windows 8. So all applications, by default, can be resized down to 500 pixels. An application can opt into being resized down to 320 pixels, like the Reading List app does, if your app can do something very useful in that smaller amount of space. Absolutely, opt into 320 pixels. If your app needs more space to do something useful, stick with that default 500 pixel width and design for those sizes that you think are optimal for your users. And you'll need to think about the devices you want to support. I've seen some great smaller devices around, and you guys saw that great 8.1, I think, inch tablet. Give me 1 second. And when you think about those devices, you're going to want to think about how your users put those into portrait mode to read things, and that's not a state that you would have thought about as much in Windows 8. So in Windows 8.1, think about those portrait modes, those smaller screens, and design best for those scenarios you want to support. There's a question. Can I get you to move to the microphone so people on the video can hear as well?
So if you want to go below 500 pixels, is it only 500 or 320, or is there anywhere within that range?
Great question. So down to 500 means that your app can be smoothly resized all the way down to 500. It can be 602, it can be 700, it can be any size. If you choose to size down to 320, again, it's a smooth resize down to 320 pixels. You can be 400, you can be 408, any of those sizes. So you need to support that smooth re-rendering at any width.
But can you set your minimum to be, say, 400 pixels, or is it only 500 or 320 is the minimum that you can set? 500
or 320. And let's take a look at what that looks like in the app manifest. If you decide to support down to 320, you can set in your app manifest the minimum width as 320. And Visual Studio has a great designer for that app manifest. And it's very easy to see what you're choosing there. And by default, as I said, 500 is what it'll be sized down to. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Is there a reason why you can't smoothly transition down? Is there a reason why you don't let people say 400 in the middle? I have some graphics that are really sized 400 and no less, for example.
So he's asked, is there a reason that we've decided to have either 320 or 500 versus choosing the exact minimum width of your application? That's a design question that would be great for the design team. We want a consistent user experience across Windows. And that, when we say it can either be 320 or 500, it makes an expectation for users that these are the widths of applications that really make sense. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Can I get you to use a microphone?
So then now, I guess, they do not encourage you rearranging your user interface when your app is in the minimum size?
You're asking if you should have a separate layout for your small size?
Yes.
Absolutely, we do. If your application can make great use of the 320 size, it probably needs to be relayed out for that 320 size. Because it's unlikely that what you do with 1024 pixels is the same thing that you're going to do with 320. For instance, that reading list app that we looked at has a different layout. It has a horizontal scroll for large layouts, or for wide layouts, and it has a vertical scroll for narrow layouts. So if you choose to support down to 320, you need to think about those layouts and really lay out something that works well for 320, which probably means a vertical scroll.
So does that mean that if I'm developing that, at some point I have to choose a number at which I kick down to a different user interface?
Yes. Okay. Yes, you do, and that's up to you. You can do that at 320, you can do that at 500, you can do that anywhere that makes sense for your application. And we'll look in a minute at how you make those calls in code.
Does that then not mean that while I'm dragging with my finger that suddenly the whole thing starts moving around? Or does it stay in vertical until I let go and then it switches to portrait mode?
Let's look at it. So let's bring up an immersive app. This is the one we were just looking at. You can see that we can smoothly resize, but the applications don't resize until I pick my finger up. So your application gets the event when that finger is dropped from the gutter. Does that make sense? I'm not sure where the questioner was. Did I answer the question? Okay, great. Okay, so let's talk about the code that you're going to have to change to support these different window sizes. If your app is HTML, it used to be that you would call application view.value, and you would get these different states, 4 different states, and you would do different things based on these states. No longer do we do these 4 different states. Snapped will never be returned once you're an 8.1 application. Now we encourage you to directly query for the width of the application on size changed and do whatever you're going to do. So again, one of the questioners asked, does this mean I need to do something for 320 or 500? It's up to you where that line is. It's up to you to decide how much space you need before you switch your layouts. And this is where you find that width and write some code to switch between your layouts. In Windows 8, we encouraged you to use media queries in your CSS files to respond to these different view states, to do different things in your styling. And the way we supported that was through the IE-only CSS property MS View State. No longer do we encourage you to use MS View State. Now we're encouraging you to use min width and max width, which are standard CSS properties. And you can use them to style your different widths the same way that you used to use MS View state, but it's far more flexible. And you can also see in my first example, I'm using a little bit of logic to make that bounded by two different widths. If you're getting orientation in HTML, you used to use that same application view.value API, and you would do a little bit of logic to figure out if this was landscape or portrait based on these 4 application view states that were returned. Now, you can use application view.get.currentView.orientation, and that will return to you landscape or portrait. You can also just get your height and width and compare them directly, and that'll tell you if you're in landscape or portrait. Obviously, height greater than width means that you are in portrait. Width greater than height means that you're in landscape. And again, querying for that orientation in your CSS files, we encourage you to use the new orientation or the standard orientation CSS property directly. If you're using XAML, you might have had a very similar piece of code to what was in HTML, where you used application view.value, and then you use this 4 returned states. You can now query for width directly, just like you do in HTML, and you use window.current.bounds.width. Height is also available. And you would use height to get your orientation, or again, you can use application view.get for current view.orientation. If you've noticed, all the Windows 8.1 code is smaller. I don't know about you guys, I love deleting code. So for me, this is great. I like being able to support just those states without trying to figure out those previous view states that we used to support and how that mapped to my layouts. So this is cleaner. So in summary, for window sizes, design your apps to work best for those scenarios that you want your users to use well for your app. If you think small devices are something really big for your app, you're building simple games and you really think that tablets are something that you care about a lot, support those orientations and those widths well. If you're a mail app or some other client that you think is only useful in large layouts, then support those and maybe opt out of going down to 320. It's really a design decision. Yes? Yeah.
I saw you might miss something in the XAML part, because in HTML, we can kind of borrow the idea for responsive design to like use the CSS styling when the size was changed.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're talking about XAML, what kind of recommendation we can do to like regarding in terms of the ways we can change the styling within the XAML?
I think you're asking, when you're in XAML, is there anything akin to the CSS properties for styling dependent on the widths for XAML? So for XAML, you can set up your styles that are named after your widths, and then you can apply those in code. The same way that you did in Windows 8, you would do those in Windows 8.1.
So that might bring more code in XAML and less code in HTML.
Well,
compares to the...
I would say that the model for styling in XAML is different from the model for styling in HTML. And you will set up those styles in your XAML files in a way that makes sense for XAML, and then you'll apply those in code the same way that you do for most XAML application styles.
Yeah. But to me, it's kind of, if we're talking about Windows 8 in the past, it's only like two styles or displays, either stamp view or the full size. But if you're talking about the variable vest, there'll be kind of maybe 4 or 5 styling within one application. So that brings more design challenge and coding probably. So
yeah, XAML has a slightly different way of styling that if you are a XAML developer, you'll be very comfortable with. And this fits into that model well. I do hear what you're saying, that the CSS properties are a nice shortcut in HTML. I can definitely take that piece of feedback that you'd like to see that kind of styling support in XAML. But I do understand what you're saying. Yes?
So if I've elected not to go lower than 500, what's the user experience? Is the tracker bar going to just stop? Or
Yes.
is it going to bounce back? Or
The tracker bar will have a little bit of almost haptic feedback where it won't go past 500. It'll kind of, it almost clicks to 500 there. We can play with it. Well, I'll tell you about it. You can play with it on your own devices. And if you go much past that, if you go 100 pixels past that, it will close down that app. It moves that gutter all the way over to the side. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you get it, you understand that if it doesn't go much smaller, if it's not resizing, then your app doesn't support smaller than that width. Okay. So other changes that may impact your app. As any application framework, application evolves, you're going to see some application APIs that no longer make sense for that framework or for that platform. And we've had a few deprecations and different changes that may affect your application. These are all well documented in those migration documents that we looked at from Visual Studio. So I encourage you to look at them. But these are the big buckets that may affect your application. If you're running an HTML application, or if you have a web view within your XAML application, your HTML content used to be running on IE 10 in Windows 8. In Windows 8.1, it's now running on IE 11. And it's tied to IE 11 dock mode. You cannot set your renderer to be 10 compatibility mode the way you can in a website. So with IE's move to IE dock mode 11, there were some changes. Hit testing in some cases works a little bit differently, and there were some deprecated APIs that have now been removed, and those have all been well documented. It's rare that you're going to hit those, but if you're using some old libraries that use old APIs, you may run into this. We saw some list view changes in Win.js where we did that styling change to get that purple border to go all the way across. Win.js's list view has a bunch of new features and a bunch of performance work. And some of those have made for some styling changes that may affect your application. And finally, across the platform, we have some API deprecations like that application view.value and some behavioral changes. And go ahead and look up anything that you think is affecting your application directly in that document, and you'll find great documentation about it. So now back to having two versions of your application, 8 and 8.1. When you get to the place where you want to submit to the store, you need to think about what it means to have those two applications targeting two different versions. If you've already submitted your Windows 8 app to the store, you've already filled in all of those properties. When you submit your Windows 8.1 app to the store, most of them will be shared across your Windows 8 and Windows 8.1 version. And those are all of the properties on the left. Your app name, and most importantly, your ratings and reviews are single properties across your 8 and 8.1 app versions. There are a few things that are different across those two versions. Your description and features. You may put new things in your Windows 8.1 version that are not in your Windows 8 version, because you're using some of those great features from that eye chart of new features. And so you can set different descriptions and feature lists. And because your application may look different, you can upload fresh new screenshots to go with it. I'm going to throw this slide up and let you guys read it for just a minute. Super clear? Maybe not. Let's talk about it. What this really means is your range of version numbers for your 8 app must never overlap with your range of version numbers for your 8.1 app. So when you start your version number for your 8.1 app, make sure you leave enough room to be able to version your 8 app bug fixes and upgrades and things like that. If you use the tools will take care of this for you. However, if you decide to change your version number manually, this is something you're going to want to think about. You don't want to have version 2.0.0.0 of both your Windows 8 app and your Windows 8.1 app with the same name. So let's submit now to the store and make some money. This is what your experience will be like when we open up the store for you to submit your Windows 8 apps. And you can start to do this when Windows 8.1 hits GA. Today you can't submit your Windows 8.1 apps to the store. But when you can, this is a sneak peek. When you upload your Windows 8 app, you'll see that green text that says you've uploaded your Windows 8 app. Most of you who have seen this, who have uploaded your Windows 8 app, have already seen this. When you upload your Windows 8.1 app with the same name, you'll see the green text above that says, we've uploaded the Windows 8.1 version. And then you'll need to go in and fill out all those properties, which was a lot of properties. But when you filled it out for Windows 8, we took those values and pushed it to your Windows 8.1 page as well. So by default, all of these values will be pre-populated with what you put in Windows 8. And to go see your Windows 8 values, you would click on that dark gray box, and it'll show all of your properties for your Windows 8 app. You can change them if you want to. Under Windows 8.1, the blue box, inside the light gray box, are all the values for your Windows 8.1 app. And again, everything in the light gray box can be different across those two apps. So we see description and app features, screenshots and notes. And now we'll get down to the end of that light gray box. And you'll see these fields in white are shared between your applications of different version numbers. Your keywords, copyright, all of these fields you can change when you submit, but they will apply to both your 8 and your 8.1 app. And that all-important save, that goes ahead and submits it to the App Store. So we're just about at the end here. Resources for you guys to learn more about certain things. Fast lane for app certification. This is a great talk on exactly what it's going to be like to submit to the store and more details like the ones that you saw at the end of this presentation. And beautiful apps at any size on any screen. We had a lot of questions about those window size changes. This talk will help you design your app for all those different widths and heights that you want to support. Migration guidance, as we saw, is available in Visual Studio and on MSDN, and you can search this. You can take it home and read it tonight if you like. And I will be in office hours tomorrow evening and Friday. If you guys bring your applications and are having any kinds of issues with migrating, I'd be happy to help answer your questions. And there are other people in office hours as well that can help you with any kind of migration issues that you have. So please fill out session evaluations. You all have pointers on where to find that. We really use it to make these better for you. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Go ahead.
What about the Bing maps? Do I get the 3D maps just by upgrading to 8.1, or I should reference the new SDK?
You're asking if you upgrade your application from Windows 8 to 8.1, will your Bing SDK reference now refer to the new SDK?
Yes.
You will have to upgrade that reference to the new SDK manually. Any references that you have that refer to an SDK that targets an older version, you need to go ahead and upgrade, because we don't know where to get that new version. Anything else?
Yes. Will it be maybe any hack to set revites of application to snap it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Will it be possible to snap application
Can you snap a Windows 8.1 application?
From code.
Oh, from code.
Yeah.
You're talking about that try unsnap?
Try snap. No, not unsnap.
No, you cannot ask an application to get into snap state.
Yeah.
There is no snap state anymore, and you can't ask another application to narrow its
Not
width.
another my own application.
For your own application, if you can do that? I don't believe you can anymore. I don't know that you ever could. I know you could ask to unsnap, but I don't think you could ever ask to snap yourself.
Sad. Thank you.
For the store, I just noticed that the screenshots are still 1366, 768, or portrait all the way around. But for instance, the Acer tablet we're getting has 1280, 800, which is a different aspect ratio. Will it be possible in the store that on my small tablet device, I get screenshots for 1280, 800, and that on my big laptop with the widescreen, I get my landscape orientation, like full HD images? That the store will adapt basically to which device you're using, because
I think you're asking if the store is going to support new resolutions for their screenshots.
yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that, but I can help you find out if you want to come up afterwards. That is a great question to ask. Come on. At Fastlane for App Certification. That speaker knows a lot more about the store's plans for sizes of snapshots. But if you need help, definitely let me know and I can route that question for
Thanks.
you.
Hi. I actually wanted to ask about the try on snap. So before you could request the app to unsnap, as there is a use case where you might have the app snapped and you actually have some functionality that does not belong in 320 or even 500 pixels. I see that's now deprecated, which makes sense, but what can we do now? Is there a way to have the app expand anymore? Or do we just have to tell the user to do so?
As far as I know, the answer is no, but I'm not completely confident in that answer.
Okay.
And at that 2-150 talk is really where they're going to have the right answer to that question. But again, I can route that question for you and find out the right answer. if you
Okay,
come
sure.
up.
Sounds-
Hi. Regarding current Windows Store applications, what will happen with the Snap View and Field View? Because they are prepared for this kind of view, right? And now we have a different split in the screen. What will happen with the UI of the current application? If it's running in Windows 8.1 system.
So if your application has not been upgraded to Target 8.1, if it's a Windows 8 application, you'll get that pillar boxing that only leaves it in 320 mode, that snapped mode, and gives you pillar boxes up to a reasonable size. So compat mode is a slightly different beast from once you've retargeted for Windows 8.1. If your 8 app has not been retargeted to 8.1, we will not put it in a state that your app was not designed for. And we'll put those pillar boxes to make sure that they're only sized to those widths that your app was designed for.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there are any additional questions, oh, sorry, go ahead.
If you upgrade your application now with the preview of 8.1, will it work with the release of 8.1 or will there be additional changes required?
You're asking if you make that migration, do we know
Today
for sure?
with the preview.
Right, what's the compatibility promise? We do not have a compatibility promise that says it's going to be exactly the same. Our whole point behind the preview is to get that kind of feedback that can tell us the places that we've made mistakes in the platform. And so there will be some changes between the 8.1 preview and the 8.1 general availability release. And they may impact your app. I can't tell you what those are going to be because we don't know. In large part, that feedback is going to come from you. And my hope is that they will not be a huge developer burden if you've upgraded your app, but they may impact you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Feel free to come up and ask me any additional questions that you have. Thanks, guys.